Yeah, Halls of Valor is one of the best looking dungeons our team has ever made. I can't wait till you guys get your hands on it. So the counterpart to the Halls of Valor. So whereas the greatest warriors of the Vrykul ascend to spend an eternity feasting in the Halls of Valor, the cursed, the fallen Vrykul, they are ferried on the ship of the damned to Helheim, the domain of the fallen Valkyr queen Helya. And you are going to find yourself at a fog-shrouded dock alongside other fallen souls, waiting for the ship of the damned so that you can get on board and retrieve and safeguard some of the most precious of cargo. You'll have to see what it is. But yes, I did say ship, and that does mean that a good chunk of the dungeon takes place on a ship. So in a sense, if you know what the Grimrail Depot is to trains, you might think of this with regard to ships. This speaks for itself. So we've rounded up all the motion sickness prone designers on the team, had them play through the dungeon. Everyone reports it's good, so fingers crossed. One last close look, Blackrock Hold. So as Julia mentioned earlier, Blackrock Hold is an elven fortress towering over Val'Sharah. This was carved from basically a mountain of black stone, and it represents a militaristic side of Night Elves that we haven't really seen much before. Atop Blackrock Hold, this was the ancestral home of Lord Kurtalos Ravencrest, who was originally Illidan's mentor. We're going to need to go in there on the trail of Illidan as we seek to unravel and discover the secrets behind what Illidan's up to and what the Legion is up to. So, Blackrock Hold. All right, so 10 awesome dungeons waiting for you in Legion. Let's talk a little bit about the role of dungeons in the endgame. Almost seems like it goes without saying, of course dungeons are endgame. You hit max level, you run heroics, you gear up. Obviously, over the years, we've taken different approaches with valor points, with badges, to keep dungeons relevant and a central part of the expansion throughout, but really, we've made that our focus more than ever before in Legion. So our goals for Legion, as we were setting out to think about the place of dungeons, were that we needed dungeons to remain relevant throughout the entire expansion. And relevance means both in terms of reward, but also the difficulty and the engagement of the experience, so that you're not, as you did maybe in the past for Valor or badges, stomping increasingly easy content for increasingly better rewards. But of course, if you're going to be doing dungeons for the entire expansion, it's important that there be some variation in the experience. And on top of all of that, we want to avoid what we call internally the Mechanar problem, where given the choice, you'll tend to pick the easiest dungeon, the most efficient one, and do that repeatedly for the rewards at the expense of the others, and even if it's not your personal favorite dungeon. So how does this all come together? We had Mythic Dungeons in 6.2. We've had Challenge Mode. What if we were to combine some of those ideas? What if we were to take Challenge Mode and repurpose Challenge Mode as a true open-ended endgame experience for all players to make dungeons relevant from start to finish, so you can do a dungeon that's as hard as you want or need it to be for a reward that is commensurate in power to the challenge you just took on. That is what Legion Challenge Mode will be. So today, to start a challenge mode in Warlords, you walk into a challenge mode, you click on the pedestal at the start, a timer pops up. In Legion, you will begin these challenge dungeons with a challenger's keystone that you will obtain And it means still to be determined, probably through some of the world event quests that we talked about earlier. But this keystone points to a specific Legion dungeon and has a power level associated with it. That power level determines the difficulty of the dungeon you're going to be running, but also the reward that you're going to receive from it. At higher levels, the keystone may also introduce some additional modifiers as a wrinkle to keep you on your toes. Now, there's still a timer in Legion challenge modes. However, instead of gold, silver, and bronze, we're condensing it to a single timer that's actually probably a little bit more lenient than what silver currently is. We don't want this to be about a frenetic, mad dash through the zone. We want it to be about awesome core dungeon gameplay. If you beat that timer, then you upgrade your stone, and you can take on a higher, more powerful difficulty level and better rewards. If you fail, well, then your stone is depleted, but you still get loot for completing a challenge dungeon regardless, and the quality of that loot depends on what you just completed, even if you didn't meet the timer. So again, core philosophies here. We want to scale the dungeon up to suit your skill, your gear, your preferences, not scaling you down the way current challenge mode does in Warlords, because that feels increasingly bad as you get stronger. We want the focus to be on the combat gameplay of dungeons, not just go, 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 go as fast as you can and AoE pull and stun, but rather what makes dungeons the awesome experience they are as part of the MMO genre as a whole. We want unbounded progression. As good as you are, there will always be a challenge waiting for you. There'll always be another step on the ladder. And finally, there are new modifiers to master each week as you get further into the system. Now, what does that mean? So let's take a look at what the UI might look like for starting a challenge. So here we see a pretty high-level keystone that's being used to start the Halls of Valor. We see some significant modifiers to the health and damage of the creatures, but then also 2 additional affixes that are going to modify the dungeon. So this keystone has the Raging affix. Raging affix means that when all creatures in the dungeon get below 30% health, they're going to deal double damage until killed. That's going to change your approach a little bit. Suddenly you can't walk in and AoE cleave down every pack of mobs. You need to really focus fire. You really need to single target in a way that you didn't before. And that's just one example of many in terms of how we're going to change up your gameplay. So imagine extra mobs, extra enemies and pulls. Imagine a challenge dungeon where all corpses are going to explode and leave fire on the ground after they die. Or just to keep your healers on your toes, what if everyone is taking constant damage over time while the dungeon's in progress? You think you can handle that? Fortunately, there are awesome rewards waiting for you if you can. This system is going to start at just a small step above heroic dungeons. So don't hear challenge and think, oh, this isn't for me. If you do heroic dungeons, this is for you. There is a point of entry for you here. But no matter how hardcore you are, there is something in this that will break you. It's up to you to find that breaking point. The higher you go, the better the rewards. And the core of the system we want to deliver is a genuine alternate path to complement rating or even replace it for you entirely if that's what you prefer, if that's the gameplay that you choose in your dungeons. All right, so just to wrap up really quickly, that was just a slice of what we have in store for you this weekend when we have to talk about Legion. Thank you so much for coming out. I know one question that's probably in everyone's minds is, when do I actually get to see more of this? When do I actually get into beta to play some of this myself? Good thing you ask. So the first thing we do after we get back from BlizzCon, well, probably going to be to sleep. The second thing we do is going to be to start getting our beta servers prepared for a closed beta launch. That's going to be coming in the weeks immediately following BlizzCon. Make sure you're opted in. Can't wait to get people in to experience the world, to experience the game that we're building. So finally, for those in attendance today, and staying tuned for the rest of the weekend, we have a lot more to talk about with Legion. In Hall A later today, we're going to have a cinematics panel focusing on the amazing cinematics that you saw earlier and more. And tomorrow, we have 2 additional panels. We're going to have a game systems deep dive where we talk more about artifacts, class orders, items, professions, and the rest, as well as classes. And then a Q&A after that. If you have any questions after this panel or just that you've been musing on yourself that you want to submit, stop by the Darkmoon Fair booth in Hall A. You can drop off your questions for the Q&A there. Thank you so much for coming out. Enjoy the rest of BlizzCon.
Thank you for attending the World of Warcraft Legion World and Content Overview panel. Up next, the Heroes of the Storm